Okay, thank you so much for joining me today, Chandra. Am I saying your name correctly?
Chandra,
Chandra, Chandra.
but I
Okay.
answer to anything that's reasonably close.
Okay, that is great to know. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your professional background.
Certainly, I am a California certified lawyer. I have been an attorney for 33 plus years. I specialize in family law litigation. I do a lot of trial work. My background educationally, I graduated in 1990 from Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles, and I'm a 1982 graduate of Brigham Young University in Interpersonal Relations.
That sounds great. Did you always know that this was going to be where your career was going to go, or had you started something else?
Well, I had always wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't necessarily know what field of law or what area that I wanted to practice. And so after I graduated from law school and became employed, I kind of graduated slowly toward family law. It's interesting. No 2 days are the same. And you get to work with a whole field of experts, a whole field of judges and community. It's just something that I don't think I would get in any other field of law. But I did work for about 7 years for Mattel Toys in their legal compliance department. And that was pretty interesting.
Oh, Mattel Barbie.
Yes,
Oh,
in
we
fact,
have
I worked
a
on the
Barbie
Barbie.
lawyer. Oh,
I
that's
worked on the
amazing.
Barbie line.
That is amazing. Awesome. So I'm curious, what challenges have you encountered and what notable achievements have you experienced and accomplished?
I'm sure. Let me start with achievements. I am a certified family law specialist. You have to have a certain number of years in practice, and you have to pass a secondary bar exam in order to become a certified specialist. I have a number of awards. In law school, I had a number of merit-based scholarships. I was also appointed to law review. I have been a super lawyer for, let's see, I think it's been since 2018. So 7 years, something like that.
Okay.
I'm named in Who's Who. I've written several articles that have been published on important family law issues. Uh, I mean, that's just me in a nutshell.
All right. Well, it sounds like you had some very interesting experiences. Um, how did you go, or what made you decide to go from Barbie to doing family law?
Well, finishing law school, first of all, had a
Okay.
lot to do with that. And then when I had my first job out of law school, I was doing criminal defense, civil litigation, mostly personal injury on the plaintiff side, and then I was doing family law. And while criminal defense and civil litigation are interesting, uh, some of it has to do with economics and cash flow coming in, but also being in family law gave me the ability to help guide these people who are going through, some of them, the worst times of their lives and hoping to improve things for them. We always talk about the criminal clients being the worst people on their best behavior and our family law clients being good people at their worst behavior. So,
That's a great way to view that.
yeah, we try to help them get through that. Most of these people that I work with are just really good people going through a really rough time. And it's very fulfilling to be able to help them navigate through the convoluted court system and to get them to where they need to be.
Well, thank you for helping that. And what would you say your primary responsibilities are in that role?
My primary responsibility is to get the best outcome I can for a client. the goal isn't to win, because in family law, there are no winners and losers, right? It's
Yeah.
just getting the best outcome that works in the client's best interest.
What kind of advice would you offer to anybody aspiring to enter your field?
Oh, let's see. Study hard.
I
The
bet.
more you know, the better off you are. Some of my best experiences and best outcomes in court are because I've kept up with the ever-changing case law that comes through. Just knowing what you need to do, knowing the procedure, knowing the cases, and knowing the law, that's going to get you to where you need to be for your clients. Second, and this is one thing that I didn't do in law school, if you're interested in family law, take more of the family law classes. I took just what was required, which was basically community property. And so some of this was, in practice, was learning experience, I guess you'd call it. And I would have been better off if I had taken a couple more of the family law classes that had been offered.
That is great advice. When you do have to keep up on the changing laws, do you have like notifications that you get from the justice system or from your employer, or do you have to look into it yourself and just stay vigilant on that?
A little of everything, actually. So there, through the bar associations, there are subscriptions that you can get that will update you when cases come through. So, for example, I belong to the LA County Bar Association, and every day I get what they call an e-brief that lets me know what's come down in the California Supreme Court and the appellate courts. We also do continuing education. So we go to seminars, we go to updates, all of these things let you know what's going on. Probably of all of the areas of law, family law is the fastest changing from year to year. So we really have to keep apprised of what's happening.
Okay, that's very good to know. Thank you. What motivated you to become a TEDx speaker?
Well, my husband, for one,
Yeah.
since he's a professor of speech communication studies at MSJC. But I watched TEDx talks and I thought they were very interesting. I thought, oh, I can do that. And I'm speaking on a subject that's very close to me, something that I work with all the time, and that's domestic abuse. And that's one area of the law that is constantly changing. The courts are always interpreting what the statutes mean, and then the legislature is changing the statutes to try to better fit what's going on in society. And we've seen some major changes since COVID with respect to the law itself and with respect to how it's interpreted.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that that was one of the fastest changing um, legal departments.
Well, what generally happens, and I sat, one of my accomplishments is I was the legislative liaison for the Inland Empire to our big FlexCom, that's the Family Law Executive Committee for the California Lawyers Association. And we did legislative review. So a legislator would say, hey, I have this need, I've got this statute, it's a family law related statute. We would pick it up and take a look at it, see if there were any problems, if it needed to be revised, and that sort of thing. But where the legislators generally get this idea about the statute is from their constituents. The constituent has a certain need, or something went wrong at court, or didn't think the statute was fair as it was applied to them, and would go to their legislator and say, hey, we need to change this. And then they would draft some legislation, and then we review it at the committee level and then give them some feedback with respect to that. I mean, as an example, somebody decided that pets were as important as children. So a legislator drafted, and well, in some cases they are. I know
Yeah.
my husband would be devastated if anything happened to our 3 cats. But so the legislator wrote this statute that said that the custody of the pet would go in accordance to the best interests of the pet. Well, that's the standard for child custody, is the best interests. And there's a lot of ways that we determine the best interests, including what we call custody evaluations, where you get psychologists involved. There's interviews, testing. It's a whole process. And we looked at the statute and it was like, we're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars litigating over the best interests of the pets. So we were able to go in and revise that statute. But that was a change that had come up because of a constituent that had a problem. And that happens very, very frequently. You know, you've got statewide courts full of family law litigants. There's just a huge population, and that's why there's so much change.
So would you recommend to a client or anybody who is going through a case that if they disagreed with the statute, that they could go and speak to a representative and see if they can get that changed?
I'm sure. And there are some statutes that do need to be changed. You know, it's an I hate to say ever changing, but that's really what it is. You know, the needs of society change, the psychologically recognized issues, those change frequently. So, you know, if somebody says, hey, this statute really doesn't make sense, and especially as it applied to me in this case, they can go talk to their legislator and say, hey, we need to do something about that. And then they can work with the legislator to effect that change.
Okay, that's great information. And so what is the central theme of your speech on domestic violence?
Sure. It's breaking the cycle through connections. There's a lot of instances of domestic violence. When we talk about the statistics in my talk, and frequently victims don't realize they are victims because they get used to what's going on. Or they'll think, well, this is not abuse. I wasn't hit. You know, there's no bleeding. I might have been kept in the house, or, you know, not had money, or my partner punched holes in the wall, you know, but nothing happened to me personally, physically, so I'm not a victim of abuse. That's not the case, especially under California law and how it's evolved. So there are ways of getting out of that cycle. So I want to talk about what is domestic abuse. How do you recognize it? How can somebody outside your little circle help you? And how you can help yourself? The connections that you can make to break that cycle and start living your life.
What would you say would be the first step somebody could take when they want to know if they are being abused or not?
One of the first steps that they could take, well, first of all, is looking at the statutes. But second of all, there are a lot of really good resources out there. One that I use frequently is the National Hotline for Domestic Abuse. There's a lot of good information and resources that are provided. Locally, there are a number of places, for example, and, you know, we're not allowed to, there's limits and restrictions what we can talk about in our TED Talks. But locally, there are some very, very fine organizations that their focus is to help victims of domestic abuse. Super easy to get to these days because of the internet. You know, even on your phone, you can find these resources, but they're out there. Having the support groups and knowing that you're not alone is one of the first steps to breaking that cycle. But again, you have to recognize that you are the subject. You are the subject of abuse. And that's one of the ways to go about it is, hey, my significant other punched the wall or threw, you wouldn't believe the things that people have thrown at each other. Maybe you would, but,
Unfortunately.
my partner threw this at me. And, is that really abuse? And you can go to the internet and look or go to the statute and look and see if that is actually abuse. And in my talk, I discuss some of the instances where an action is or is not abuse. So we have the statute, and then the case law defines the statute. So the case law is a little more specific, and I do present some of that in my TED Talk.
Would I be able to ask you if there is a statute that people might not realize is a statute?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is there anything that you've noticed maybe would be considered abuse that most people don't realize is?
Oh, sure. Tracking somebody
Okay.
could be considered abuse. Invading your private emails could be abuse. There's actually case law about using illegally obtained access to emails and threatening to disseminate those emails as constituting abuse. Threatening texts. So frequently we'll just say, oh, I could just kill you, but that could be taken as a threat if it's coupled with other associated things. Not having access to your finances if you're with your partner. We see that pretty frequently where, you get a couple $100s a month to buy your groceries, and if you don't behave yourself, you don't get your money. That's abuse. So one of the broad terms in the statute is disturbing the peace of the other. And what are the things that disturb the peace? And that's where the court comes in and defines what is disturbing the peace.
I think your TED Talk is going to be really helpful to a lot of people. Thank you very much for picking such a controversial topic. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Retired.
Retired. Oh, well, I hope you enjoy your retirement. Is there anything you would be doing, enjoying it?
Probably doing a lot of traveling. With my husband being a professor, we can't take advantage of fall deals to go places or spring deals to go places, and are taking a little bit more time to go out. We love to meet people of other cultures, learn about their cultures and their countries. It's one of our favorite things to do. I also think about maybe doing some domestic violence clinics, working as minors counsel, and being able to pick and choose some of the cases that I take.
It sounds like a great retirement, and I wish you the best in that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me interview you today. I just have a final question for you. When is your TED Talk going to be available?
That I don't know. I'm recording on April 14th. I think I ended up having some court issues come up, but that's the plan right now, is to record on April 14th. And then from there, after all of the editing, I'm not quite sure.
Okay, well, I am definitely personally going to be looking forward to listening to your TED Talk. I think I'm going to thoroughly enjoy what you're going to have to say, and I'm sure plenty of other people will find it very useful. And just want to say thank you again for your time.
Oh, you are very welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day and a great afternoon.
You too.